Hello, myself GAMRE. Today I'm to speak about the history of philosophy and the topic is about the Aristotle Ethics. So the Aristotle Ethics are subjected into the three main topics, and the first one is the soul, second is the virtue, and the third is the moral development, which is then subjected into the politics and the art. So in order to develop an ethic, what Aristotle does is to talk about a human soul and what are its proper functions and what he calls the vegetative soul and a vegetative soul, and also we can say the rational soul, and as he puts the life in a complete order and with accordance with the reason, and it's the parallel statement is in accordance with the virtue because the virtue is simply a proper functioning. So a term virtue, the way of defining a term virtue by Aristotle is something that it is defined as simply a good functioning. So functioning in accordance with a inner telos and the final cause of it. So you see that what we are actually actualizing our human potential, and namely complete life in an accordance with a specific reason. So keep in mind that the virtue has to do with the whole life, about the outward behavior and also about the inner dispositions. So the intellectual virtue is divided into the practical wisdom and the contemplative wisdom. So a just society is something that is rationally ordered from a common good. So what is a good individual? The good individual is that whose emotions are properly ordered for a common good, and which means for his good and for the society too. So if we recall about the Plato, he gave one theory which is the theory of forms. So that was a very parallel thing with Aristotle. So what Aristotle thinks is forms only exist in the world of the particulars. Particular means everything should be equal, everything should be well managed, and everything must be disciplined with habits. So, and the kind of education he wants is the liberal education. Well, now we'll talk about the art. So here again there is an initiation of this of somewhat transitory or the similarity to the Plato. We can recall what Plato think about the art. So what Plato thought about the art, that art is a kind of imitation. But here a point crossover between the Plato and Aristotle. So what Aristotle thought about the art, that art is not a form of imitation, but it is a form of life, and imitation is a form of life. So the art is representational, and we can say that because a genius artist or a genius who is good at art, he always helps you to see something universal. Now in the other sense, he finds out a poetry as a form of art. So he said one thing: poetry more scientific than history. Didn't it strike your mind? Yeah, exactly. So that is only the thing that we don't think it like that. But actually we can say that history is something which tells you the story, and in the poetry we can think about something universal. And during his time, he saw history is just narrating about the particular people and in a chronological way. So that is it, and that is not much more than this in history. So he compared these two things, and he made a conclusion about this, that whatever it is a form of art.
Hello sir, my name is ANIKET RAJPUT. I am from second group, subgroup first. As my friend HRUGVI explained the topic of Aristotle philosophical theory, as the professor Dr. Arthur explained in this lecture, we like to conduct our memories, our summaries here. I'm just going to distribute my speech about the non-contradictional by the basis of philosophy of the Aristotle, first published in the February 2007. According to the Aristotle, first philosophy or metaphysics deals with ontology and first principle, of which the principle and law of non-contradiction is the firmest. Aristotle says that without the principle of non-contradiction, we could not know anything that we do know. Presumably, we could not demonstrate the subject matter of any of the special science, for example, biology or mathematics, and we would not be able to distinguish between what something is for example a human being or a rabbit, and what is it like, for example, a red or white. Aristotle's own distinction between the essence and accidental would be impossible to draw, and the inability Aristotle own distinct between essence and accidental would be impossible to draw, and the inability to draw distinct in general would make by the ratios. Aristotle main and most famous distinction on the principle of non-contradiction occurs in Metaphysics, 4th, Gamma, 3, 6 essential, 4th. Are also synapses of decisions about the principle of non-contradictional early in the corpus, for example in T interpretation, and there is the Obscure chapter 11 of posterior analysis first, and none of this revival Aristotle treatment of the principle of non-contradiction in Metaphysics 4. The discussions below mostly concern the main introduction and philosophical issues that arises from reading Metaphysics 4, 3 and 6 section. Aristotle discussions of the principle of non-contradictional also raise thorns issue in many areas of modern philosophy. For example, question about what we are committed to by our belief, the relationship between the language throughout the world, and the principle. Aristotle explains some laws here. Three versions of the principle of non-contradictional: the peculiar status of the principle of non-contradictional, the electing method, and transcendental argument. Aristotle challenges to the opponent to signify some of one things: the role of Aristotelian essentialism, the principle of non-contradictional and action, the principle of non-contradictional and proximity of truth or the truth like, the argument of confliction appearance, Prostates, Heraclitus, and the Plato treatise, Aristotle conclusion, diathelism, paraconceptions, and Aristotle. Posterior analysis 11 and laws of contradiction. There are 12 terminology he explained in every section of their field. As a professor Dr. Arthur explained here, we just take the summary from the situation and explain in our own word. I would like to explain three of them. There is first the three versions of the principle of non-contradiction. There are arguable three versions of the principle of non-contradiction to be found in Aristotle, and ontologically a doxist and a semantic version. The first version of concert thing that exists in the world. The second is about what we can believe, and the third related to assertion the truth. The first version is usually taken to be the main version of the principle, and it turns as follows: it is impossible for the same thing to belong and not to belong at the same time, or to the same thing and in the same respect. Suppose we think that we are believe that we are now in that situation, but at the past, when we are passed out, there is only thinking that is true, that is in our past session, that what should work we are done in our present for our futures. It becomes the significance of the quality of non-contradiction words here, the truth and false. Qualification explained in the term the same thing that belongs must be one of the same thing, it must be the actual thing and not merely its lingual expression. The second version is as follow: it is impossible to hold suppose the same thing to be and not to be. He explained in the terminology, although this version is ambiguous as it stands, it is the better best understood as the claim that it impossible to hold the same thing be false and not to be the false, and etc. As a distorted account of human psychology, this may seem impossible. People surely have inconsistent belief. Indeed, most of us have Most of us have many inconsistent beliefs. This is the special true if we take into account the consequence of our belief. Must one thought believe the consequence of one belief. This remain difficult issues in modern philosophy of language and epistemology. Can we knowing, believing, and outright contradictional Heracles, for instance, seems to say contradictional things. Here Aristotle might restore, and he does not restore with respect of the Heracles that peoples can understood such words. And later, alternative ways of understanding the second formula is to treat it not as a descriptive claim about the human psychology, but as a normative claim, as a claim about it is rational to believe. On this view, it is not that one cannot believe on the false and not false, but that one cannot rationally do so. Means if the person shouted the false thing in the true section, that it is true, there is might be chances the people think it is the true thing, but it is a false. It is not completely clear how Aristotle understands the second formula. At the end of the Metaphysics 4, Aristotle gives us a bad argument that the doxastic version rests on the ontologist version, confusing belief that not false with not having the belief that false. There is a further problem with this second formula. We need to distinguish the possibility of the belief that false is not true is not a false as a particular case for the possibility of disbelievability, the first version of PNC in its full generality. The third version is that opposite assertion cannot be true at the same time. As the third version says that the opposite assertion cannot be true at the same time. As it does stand, this version is neutral about the internal structure of the assertion, but Aristotle assumed that any assertion involves predicting one thing of another. As with the second formula, one might use a psychological interpretation relating to what people actually do affairs and daily, but the idea that oppositely assertion cannot be true at the same time suggested the third version is the better interpreted as a variant of the better formulas. Which assertion Aristotle intended to establish is a matter of controversial. He could be established the second version on the basis of the first, or the first version on the basis of the second. There is a controversy between the first and second and the third and the fourth, or just the second version. The particular status of principle of non-contradictional. Aristotle says that PNC is one of the common axioms common to all the special science. It has no special subject matter, but applies to everything that it is the first principle and also the firmest principle of all. Like models points, like as Lewis Carroll memorable shows, PNC does not function as a premium in any argument. Unlike models opponents, PNC is not a rules of inference. Aristotle says that it is a principle which is necessary for anyone to have who knows any of the things that are. It is no merely hypothesis. Aristotle explained that gives its peculiar status as the firmest first principle. PNC is not susceptibility to demonstration. A demonstration is a deductive argument, the conclusion of which is due for firmly prior Christian. Aristotle given the PNC to by comparing it with the logical principle that might be rival for the title of the firmly first principle. For example, his version of law of exclusive middle for an x and for an f. It is necessary either to assert f of x or to be any f or x. Instead, Aristotle defends other to find a prior principle. For modern for modern philosopher, it is still an interesting question whether PNC is prior to other principle of logic or indeed to the nothing of true. Reference and identify PNC, the notice of identifying it is impossible for the same thing to belong and not to belong to the same thing at the same time. PNC is a supported by the Leibniz's law, which state that if X and F are discriminant, if one has the property that the other lacks, then the X not identical with the Y. The third is the electrical methods and transduction argument. The idea of using this argument, it is firstly explained by the Ethics reference and the sortical method of argument. When Sortical used the Elenchus, he get his opponent to refute himself out of his own mouth. The opponent makes a proposal that it is shown to conflict with other claim, to which he argues to be consist the opponent must give up one of these claims. So the idea of using an equation is at the first sight where puzzling. The person claimed to reject PNC is not being consistent and apparently does not want to the Aristotle and not trying to catch the opponent in that form. And the fourth is Aristotle challenges to opponent of the scientific some one things. So this is my section from the point explained by the Dr. Arthur. I'd like to explain some terminology and some laws here. He explained laws on the basis of law of thought and law of appetibility. Law of thought is directly corresponds to law of substance. So if I taking mistake, if I could mistake in any laws, so sorry for that. So thank you, sir.
Hello guys, I'm SHIAHIR CHOWDHARI and I'm here to talk about Aristotle's metaphysics and his thoughts. So basically my friends have already told you about how he defines metaphysics, like how metaphysics is the science of all the sciences. Like they explain you each and everything about the forms plus causes. Like causes are divided into four basic parts: is efficient cause, material cause, formal cause and the final cause. Okay, so I am here basically to talk about the being and some related topics over that. The being is it is the most common type of science, and it's every particular type has a different type of science on its being. Like each being is each being has its own kind of being science or science being, and it is most general and most common type of concept. The existence of all physical being, like the origin, then the nature and the end. Like how the being is being originated, how he survive in the nature, and then how it's came to an end. Predetermination of physical being. Predetermination of physical being is the laws or the effects of the laws and the force of the natures. Like how to explain this, I can explain you this with a type. Like a body is being originated, and the forces and laws which are applied by the nature on him or on a body, on a substance, to make him grow or make that substance develop. And the nature which is applying the forces itself and the laws and the effects on itself, it's predetermined, like it's predetermined by the nature itself. Moving further, the existence of all living being, the origin and the nature. It's the existence, in which form each and every organism is being existed at a particular moment, and how it's being originated, and how nature is nurturing itself, its product, maybe we can say that. The quintessence of being human. The quintessence of being human is a social animal and individuality. Like a person is a social animal, and he is having its own individuality. This all these 4 points which I have talked right now is all explained, and all are part of being. It's They all are four categories of. So moving further on the categories of being. So categories of being are divided into 10 parts, but the first part is primary, the substance. So the first part is substance, and rest all is, you can say, quality, quantity, relationships, places, and individuality, reality, everything is secondary. Only the substance is considered as primary category of being, and rest all are considered as secondary category of being. So coming to the parts of laws of being, that is also the part of thought. The first law is law of contradiction, and it says that where A is not equal to non-A. And the second law is law of identity, where A is considered as A. Okay. And the third is the law of excluded middle, like where is X can be have the value of A or can be have value of non-A, like whether it can be true or whether it can be true. If this one is true, then this should be considered as false. So here it's been explained with an example, you are having this three colors, white, black and green. If you consider this as a main substance, then these two will be considered as non-white. But if you consider this as main subject, then these two will be considered as non-black. Okay, so these are the laws of being. And you know what? In philosophy, the term substance is, we can't consider it as, we can't just specify material things. Like the word substance, we can't use it as a material thing, or it can't denominate the substance materialism. Basically, if we talk about like soul, so what is soul? Soul is like just a substance of internal being. You getting me? Like soul is the basic essential substance of being a human, of being a person. So basically substance is the main primary function and the main primary thing in the philosophy. So substance has three nominations, which are as according, like first one is particular, the second one is form, and the third one is matter. So basically the first one is particular, and this particular is considered as substance, which is formed by these two things. Like they are aligned in the line, but they are not in the line. This particular substance is formed by the form and the matter. It is says that the form, you never find it alone. It will be always find in a complex. You will always find it in the substance, in the particular substance. Like the same ways you will find the matter. You just can't find a matter on the single pieces. You will find the matter in the form, and they togetherly formed in the particular substance. And substances are again then divided into primary and secondary one. So the primary one is the individual things which perceives around us, like a car or a fly or a pen. They are separate from other one, the particular one, the numerical one, like they are considering as one, the particular specific one. And what the secondary one? The secondary one are a kind of things which particular things belongs. What are secondary things? Like the secondary things are the things which the first one, the primary ones, are belong. Like you are having a rose given by someone, like your boyfriend, girlfriend, someone has given it to you. So this rose is considered as secondary, and you are considered as primary. And like you are owning a horse, you are considered as primary, your horse is considered as secondary. Here explaining Aristotle's laws and categories with an example. Like there is a person's body. So what it has rational form and animal body. And animal body further are having animal soul and a vegetative body, and it also further having a vegetative soul and an element matter. So what vegetative soul have? Well, vegetative soul have have nutrition firstly, and then will have reproduction. What animal souls has? Animal soul is having sensation, locomotion, nutrition and reproduction. And what a person's body or a human's body having? Rationality, sensation, locomotion, nutrition and reproduction. So basically this is all the sum up. Like it's all considered as like these all moving things are moved by an unmoved mover. Coming to the end of this video, what we can sum up is that on of being of metaphysics being is their categories, their laws, and their primary secondary substances, and their all the causes and everything. The end should of each and everything, of each and every soul, of each and whether it's vegetative, reproductive, or animal soul, or everything, whosoever it may concern, it should be the final cause of each and everything, of all these sciences, of all the science of the sciences, the metaphysics is, it should be end at God. The God should be the final cause. The God should be the final cause of each and everything. That each and everything should be end up on the God. The cosmos are making magnetic movement, whether it's all